Jesse Woods presents Reports of an Esoteric Investigator, Episode 1, Deep Dreams. Welcome, gather close, listeners. My name is Jesse, and I'm here to share the spooky, the strange, and esoteric encounters that us plain, everyday people have. I have spent decades of my life devoted to the creepy and eldritch, and I think it's time I tell the world all about them. To warn y'all, so to speak. To show y'all what lies beyond the veil. And so, I'll read to you all the various stories and accounts that I've found, or that have found me. Every last one is real, dear listeners, that I can promise you. I can tell, well, we'll get into that a little bit later, just trust me on this one. Every tale comes from a real person who had a genuine encounter with something from the other side. So, let's turn on the fireplace. And for those like me that believe, take this tale as a warning, and for those that don't believe and think this is merely some faceless man on the internet spouting spooky stories like an old 90s children's show, let's set the mood for you. I found this one in the Toronto Reference Library a few years ago, and something about it spoke to me. Most reference libraries have only the smallest sections on the supernatural, barely more than a few newspaper clippings here and some hastily written reviews there, but there was a few accounts there this time. Of them all that I've photocopied and brought back here, this one pulls me in. So it seems the perfect one to begin with. Here we go. Dear Diary, I know it's been a while. My therapist suggested I start writing in this some 6 or 7 years ago now, but I really didn't want to. What purpose would it serve? No one would read it, and I know my own thoughts, my own memories. I know what happened. I know nothing, really. So here I am now. I'm writing in you today because it's raining. It was raining that day 10 years ago, and it's raining now. It always rains on this day, every year. My name is Victoria, and this didn't happen to me. Oh gods, how I wish it happened to me. Then at least I wouldn't have to live with this, wouldn't have to know that it was my fault, that if I'd just paid a bit more attention, just listened to her a bit more, it was 10 years, 6 months, and 3 days ago. At least that's when I think it started. It's when I noticed it. Maybe I should start at the beginning. Carla was my daughter. She was my everything. Her father passed away when she was 2, drowned in the lake by our cottage. She was in the house at the time, so she never even saw it happen, but she developed a fear of the water regardless. I tried signing her up for swimming lessons when she was 6, but she just kept looking at the local pool with sheer terror on her face. And when the instructor tried to help her in, she screamed so loud that we were asked to leave. In every other area of her life, she was as normal as you could imagine. Had a lot of friends. She always made friends easily. Had decent grades. She played volleyball in school. Was in the music program. Got a normal job out of high school at the local McDonald's. She went to college. Went for cooking. She stayed at home for those years. Chef school requires a lot of expensive equipment, and it was much better than staying in the dorms. Plus, and I know this is pretty stereotypical, but I wasn't ready for her to leave home just yet. The days she would come home from college and then her job right after, they were so lonely. I hadn't started dating yet, and while Carla would try to get me out and meet people, I only really left the house for my own job and for groceries. It wasn't some weird shut-in or nothing. I didn't want to deal with people. When she'd been in school, elementary, middle, and high school, I left the house a lot more. For her extracurriculars, her dance lessons, driving her around to her friends' houses. I still remember when she was 16, she'd gotten more than a few asked to prom, and she was only in grade 10. Heck, a few of those boys had said they'd wait the 2 years for her after school, and I'd found that a bit creepy. But Carla had turned them all down and had made sure to spend her proms with me, her mother. I remember in grade 11, I practically begged her to go to prom just to make sure she was living her life, not stuck inside with her mom with borderline agoraphobia. She just laughed at me and pulled out a board game, Jenga, if I remember correctly. I wonder about that a lot. Did I do right by her? Did I raise her the way she needed? Did I get her all the help she'd needed? Was she screaming at me for help and I was ignoring her? Did this all happen because I was just too wrapped up in my own world, my own fears? My aunt used to tell me that the best way to deal with someone's fear was to force them to face it. I hated that as a kid. To cure my own fear of the dark, she'd locked me in the dark basement for hours, having removed all the light bulbs and covered those small basement windows with newspapers, so it was so dark that I stumbled around the whole time, unable to find the exit. I'd only been let out when my parents returned home from their date night and were horrified by what my dad's sister had done. She'd been banned from the house ever since. Should I have forced Carla to deal with it, to swim regardless of the fear, throw her in the deep end, so to speak? My mom's brother used to tell me that the best way to deal with fear, I was a pretty fighting child, but I won't go into that here, was hypnotherapy. Apparently, it had cured him of his arachnophobia. I'd seen his pet tarantula. What happened to him? Should I have tried that with Carla? Taken her to some therapist and watched her go into a trance or whatever? Would that have stopped all this? Would it have been better? I'm sorry, I'm sort of using this as catharsis. Don't really know why I'm apologizing to my own diary, but, well, here. It started, for me, 10 years, 6 months, and 3 days ago. Carla called in sick to work. She hadn't even done that before. I was actually prepared to take her to the emergency room. Checked her head for a fever 3, 4, even 5 times. Had her take a thermometer, even flattened a ginger ale for her. She kept telling me not to worry, that she just had had a long night, and that she was okay. I remember she even rolled her eyes at me, a habit I'd thought she'd lost way back in high school. I laughed. I couldn't even help it. It wasn't really funny per se, but it was just so vintage Carla. I don't really know how else to describe it. She looked at me so weirdly then, and it only made me laugh all the harder. I told her to rest up. I'd bring her some Advil later. She smiled, and I remember it made me shiver. I don't really know why. Whenever I revisit the memory, it's just a normal Carla smile, but I often wonder if that's just nostalgia clouding it. Remember leaving her room a little off-put, though for the life of me, I can't recall why. Like there was something off about her, about my own daughter, that even all these years later, I can't place it. I did end up bringing her the flattened ginger ale and Advil a couple hours later when I knew she was asleep, so she'd wake up with them next to her. She looked so peaceful there, so young. Like she was a kid again. I couldn't help it. I sat next to her and I put her head in my lap. I pet her hair a bit, humming a repeating tune I used to sing when she was young and sick. She snuggled into me a bit and I sat there for hours before she awoke. She saw me sitting there and smiled, a half-asleep little drifting grin, but I felt so happy seeing it. It was so much like how she'd been as a kid. I remember this day so well, but that one moment, the odd feeling, I can never recall why it sticks with me. She went to work the next day looking rather refreshed, and I just shrugged it all off. Perhaps she'd really just had a long night. Weirder things have happened, right? Should I have made her stay off just one more day? Would that have helped anything? I know it seems rather normal, just a young adult sick and a possibly overbearing mother, but this day, it always sticks in my mind as the day it all started. Again, she'd never, ever called out like that before. The next few days were pretty normal. Carla seemed her old self, but I'd catch moments. Little blink and you miss it style moments. Her eyes were a little too wide there, her smile faltering for the smallest of split seconds. There were bags under her eyes some days, like she hadn't slept at all. True to what I'd said, I'd see it and blink and it'd all be gone. She'd be her usual cheerful self, going to school, coming home, or going to work, complaining about her course load, her crappy boss, excitedly teaching me the technique she was learning. She taught me how to julienne potatoes to make some wonderfully crisp fries. I'd always just use the frozen ones. I'd never said anything. I always thought I was just imagining everything. Should I have? Should I have forced her to tell me just what it was that was haunting her? Then a few weeks later, she called in to work again. I know it seems small, but in her entire time of working, the after-school part-time job she'd picked up to save money for school, the summer jobs, even her current job, this was only the second time ever that she'd called in. So I went through the routine again, checking her head, bringing her ginger ale, thermometer, etc. She told me that once again she'd just had a long night, so I sat in her bed and asked her why. Had she gotten home later than I'd remembered? She told me no, that she just hadn't been able to sleep. Every so often, she said, she'd been getting weird dreams that she couldn't fully recall, but that she always awoke from them with her heart pounding and it'd take her hours to get back to sleep. She said that she thought it had something to do with water since she'd wake up with that in her mind, but she couldn't remember any details. I took her hand and told her it was fine. The next time she could come ask me for help, or I could get her some melatonin, just, anything to help her sleep. She laughed and said she was a bit too old to come cuddle in the night with Mommy from a nightmare, but she appreciated it nonetheless. I remember leaving her room, swearing that something smelled like salt. I couldn't quite place the smell then, but looking back, it smelled like seawater. Though I only had the briefest of thoughts about it, I should have said something then, I know it. The nightmares started happening more frequently. She didn't call out for all of them, of course, but I began to get concerned and insisted she go see a doctor. Eventually she did, and they referred her to a sleep clinic. It was the first time in a long, long time that she'd slept somewhere other than at home. She'd done some sleepovers as a kid, of course, and had had friends here at home, but it had been a very long time since then. I felt so empty. I know the doctors have names for it, but I think most people call it empty nest syndrome, but it really did feel empty. There's something I couldn't place an odd sense that I'm not really sure. It was on day 3, they'd asked her to sleep there for a week. She still visited at home, but didn't really stay, that I finally placed it. There was an odd smell in the house. Rather, there was a lack of a smell. It had been like those old Febreze commercials. I had gone nose blind to the smell that had been lurking in my house. Still didn't know what it was, but considering the only change was my daughter being gone, I knew it was her somehow. She showered almost daily, so I didn't think it was BO, so I got worried that it might be something else, an infection, maybe. No, the doctor probably wouldn't notice that, so I switched gears a bit. Maybe it was a new perfume or something. I didn't particularly like the scent, but if Carla did, who was I to say anything? So I forgot about it. The day she came back, I baked a small cake, decorated it with some blue frosting. It was the only color the store had had. When she came home, she smiled at it, but there was a tightness in the corner of her eyes. Anytime she looked at the cake, there was the briefest flash of something. Anger or fear, maybe. It was always so fast that I swore I was just imagining things. How I wish I'd said something that day. Asked her what was wrong, pushed for an answer, maybe insisted we stay somewhere else for a bit, maybe forced her to face that fear, though now that I know what was there, maybe that would have been worse. I don't know. Looking back, there were so many signs, so many little things. How could I be so blind, so stupid? That night, she slept well. I woke refreshed, said it was the best night's sleep she'd had in a long, long time. Those bags were gone, the tightness of her eyes, even that smell hadn't returned. I smiled at her and everything went back to normal. That was 10 years, 2 months, and 6 days ago. The nightmares returned full force a few days later. She'd wake up screaming some nights, crying others. She could never remember what was in the dreams, only that she thought it was water, a lake maybe, she'd said once when I'd held her after a particularly bad night. I asked her if it was the one by the cottage. Was she dreaming about her father maybe? She'd only shook, whispered that she didn't know. She couldn't remember. It began affecting her school, her work. Her boss actually gave her a write-up after she, in the sleep-deprived days, had fried not one but 2 people's orders in the deep fryer, bags and all. He'd been concerned for her, asked if everything was okay at home. Her school put her on academic probation, stating that she'd been missing too many classes. Apparently, she hadn't turned up for multiple projects and assignments. Her entire grade was based off those assignments, so she was slipping. I asked her where she'd been going, and she said she wasn't sure. That she'd head to the school, would be seeing the building, but then she'd blink and be on a bus stop bench, and it would be hours later. Well, I was incredibly concerned at that and brought her to a doctor, a new one. I didn't trust that last one, and she said that Carla might be reliving some kind of repressed trauma. There was an odd catch in her tone, and I got the distinct feeling that she thought it was my fault somehow. I don't know, maybe it was. Maybe if I'd insisted on the doctor sooner, maybe if I'd taken her to therapy as a kid, maybe... We did go to therapy. I don't know what they talked about. I had to sit outside in the lobby. For a bit, she seemed more focused, but the nightmares kept happening. Then, 10 years and 1 month ago, she awoke from yet another night terror, and her bed was wet. She was mortified. She thought she'd peed herself, but the smell, that wasn't urine. It was seawater, and it wasn't until then that I realized what the smell had been. We moved her into my room at that point, something I'd been insisting on. I was in her room most nights anyways, and her screams and cries waking me more than once a night. She went to bed next to me that night, crying and ashamed. I tried telling her it was okay, it wasn't her fault, that I didn't think any less of her, but she hated how helpless she felt. And I hated seeing her like that, and I didn't know what to do, what to say. I didn't really have friends to ask about it, and her therapist just told me to try to help her through it, whatever the hell's that meant. She found herself at that bus stop more often, and I woke almost nightly to soaking wet sheets that smelled of the ocean. I did more laundry that month than ever before. I took some time off work so I could be at home every day for her. It didn't help. She awoke at one point on the bus that she'd been at the stop for, and had screamed so loud that the bus driver had slammed the brakes and told her to get the hell off. I'd gone to pick her up with chills running up and down my spine. That bus, it was a go bus. You know, the ones that go from city to city. That one brought you to where our cottage was. Well, the town around it anyways. We sat there in my car for hours, my four-ways flashing on the side of the highway. Carla cried. She cried and cried, sometimes in angry frustration, sometimes in what I can only describe as mania, and sometimes in sadness. Sometimes she wanted to be held, sometimes not. The sun set and rose before we moved again. She asked me to take her to the cottage. She wanted to see whatever was happening and figure out why she was going insane. I silently took her there. I didn't know what to say. It seemed like a bad idea, but I couldn't find my voice to argue. I was watching my daughter fall apart, and I was set on doing anything that had even the smallest chance of helping her. That was 10 years and 1 week ago. We got there and grabbed a few toiletries in town. We weren't sure how long we'd been staying there, so we grabbed some overpriced clothes from a gift shop and opened the door I had locked up for what I thought was the final time all those years and years before. It smelled like dust, like musty and wet somehow. We didn't go to the dock that night. She slept peacefully that night for the first time in a while. I didn't. I spent the whole night watching her, waiting for the inevitable night terrors that had been plaguing her. I watched her face, waiting for the signs. The lip quiver that usually started it, the scowling, the twitching cheeks, anything. But she was silent and still that night. The next day she awoke, saw me sitting there. I looked like a mess. My hair was frizzy and all over, my eyes red from lack of sleep and crying. She told me to sleep, that she knew I needed it. I barely argued, just demanded that she not do anything till I woke up. I was paranoid for some reason that if I let her out of my sight, she'd go somewhere, disappear forever. She agreed, and it took me next to no time to sleep. I was exhausted, holding on by a thread. My dreams that night were of water, of the lake we were now sleeping beside, my husband. The day I came back from the grocery shopping to find my 2-year-old alone in the cottage, playing in the living room with the octopus Stuffy. She'd been using one of its tentacles to wrap around other toys and grab them. I don't really know where she got that one, if I'm being honest. I awoke as the sun set and immediately jumped up looking for Carla, my heart already pounding. But she was in the room, in the chair beside my bed, holding a flattened ginger ale. We did end up going to the dock that night. She asked about him then, my husband, her father. I told her the truth that I'd always told her. He'd been a mechanic, someone who loved working with his hands. He'd loved that lake, had inherited this entire property from his grandfather, and had loved fishing and swimming there. Always said it smelled like the ocean, that it was his own little private sea. She asked what had happened, and I told her all I knew. He'd gone fishing, or so I'd been told by the police. He'd left her in the cottage alone for some reason, and had gone out on the lake in a boat loaded with fishing gear. Then he'd apparently leaned too far out of the boat and fallen in, drowning in his surprise. At least that's what the official investigation had said. She'd shaken her head, whispering that no, that's not what happened. That the sea creature had taken him. She'd been so quiet that I wasn't even sure I'd heard her at all, that maybe I'd just imagined it again. I wanted to ask her to repeat it, to say it louder, to explain what that had meant, but I couldn't. I couldn't find the words, I don't know. Next week was pretty uneventful. She had no night terrors, but she became less. Less cheery, though I couldn't really blame her. Less excited about the little things she used to love. Like her pancakes I made, the new chef's knife I bought her when we headed into town for the day. She just kept staring out at the lake, never leaving the cottage unless I went with her. I was at a loss of what to do. On the one hand, she was sleeping better. It seemed better, but on the other, she seemed worse. Like the lake was consuming her entire personality. There were times I'd say her name over and over and over, and she'd not move, not even twitch, and I'd have to go shake her to drag her back to reality. Finally, 10 years ago. We both awoke to the sound of the rain, heavy drops hitting the ceiling. There was no wind that day, just rain that fell down so hard it was difficult to see through it. I remember telling her that we should go home when it stopped, that we should try to return to normality, to the lives we had outside of this. She'd barely looked at me that day, nodded while staring off into the middle distance in the direction of the lake. Her face was blank, like it wasn't that she was just blankly staring. It was almost like somehow she didn't have features, like her cheekbones weren't there, her lips gone, just eyes. Her beautiful blue eyes, so like his, just staring so clearly I could see the raindrops reflected in them. Then I'm having trouble writing this. Not because I don't know what happened, I do, but because it was such an escalation. Everything was calming down. She was getting back to normal. I know she was. Carla, my wonderful, hard-working, popular Carla. She suddenly jumped up. I'd yelped in surprise, and she'd run out the door. No shoes, no umbrella, not even a coat. I stood frozen for a second before running after her, yelling to her. What was she doing? Where was she going? Come back. She didn't respond, just sprinted while I followed, barely able to see her in the rain. I knew where she was going. The lake. It was the only place she could go. I knew it. I don't know how. That lake, the one her father had loved so much, the one where my husband died, taken by the sea creature. I know now that's how he died. Because when she reached that dock, she stopped, somehow not slipping in the puddles. She turned around to look at me, her face so serene and so calm, like she was asleep. Her features were back. She looked so normal, so almost happy. She opened her mouth, her voice a whisper, and yet reaching me nonetheless as I ran, panting and yelling, trying to get to her before whatever was about to happen. Goodbye, Mom. That was it. 3 words, then it happened. A tentacle easily as wide as a person covered in suckers pushed up out of the waters. A dark black and green, it rose until it seemed to reach the sky before bending down, winding around my daughter's waist. She stood motionless, her eyes closed, as I kept running, somehow so close and yet so impossibly far from her. It raised her up slowly, the tentacle joined by another and another until there was dozens of rising just out of the lake until the entire body of water seemed to be nothing but those monstrous things. Then, as I was a step away from the edge of the docks, they all slammed down, moving far faster than they'd raised, and my daughter was gone. Nothing but a series of ripples on the surface of the water. I knelt there on that soft, rotting wood, the rain battering me, but I didn't feel it. I searched, I looked, I put my face in the water, I shouted, I begged, I tried swimming into the lake. I awoke in a hospital several days later. I'd caught pneumonia and had apparently been found lying on the dock muttering about sea creatures. It's been 10 years, and every year on this day it rains. That's why I'm writing this diary. It's raining again today. I have found, over my years of research and listeners, that there's always 1,001 things that when looking back, you find you could have done, hindsight being 20/20 and all that. I don't blame this Victoria for anything, for missing signs or not knowing what to do. How could she? So often, the supernatural is just passed off as maladies of the mind or ill flesh. What is it about a mother's regrets that speak to me, to us all really, so intently, dear listeners? Perhaps some long-lost instinct, some evolutionary trait. Maybe some kind of societal conditioning. And as for the sea creature in a lake, I admit my own expertise leaves me coming up a bit short for answers. Portals to another world are often thought to be in reflective surfaces, but in a lake, in the heavy rain, I wonder just how many have been taken by this thing, this monster in the lake. And if she was indeed in the cottage and a toddler, how did this Carla see what happened to her father? And was it raining that day too? Is that the condition for the summoning of this monster? Annoying as it is to admit, with a rather large lack of any identifiable details, following up on this tale has been difficult, a theme I hate to admit plagues me a bit more often than I would like. Too many lakes in the world have cottages, and more than anyone would ever really think, have multiple missing persons related to them. And, just to kind of stab it in there a bit more, a surprisingly large number of them are named Carla, so a dead end it seems to be. But that's all for now, believers and not. If you have your own tale, a true accountant, please let me know. Send me an email with as many details as possible at... And no fake ones, please. I'll know the difference. Until next time, listeners.